Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This is S4A Livestream number 121, being recorded on October 17, 2024. It's been, I think, 3 weeks since our last stream. I like doing these streams. It does kind of take a lot out of me, so I'm rested. We got 46 people in the chat here, twitch.tv/socialism S4A, and we've been chatting for a little bit here about this and that. We're going to start off just with a little more chat as we get caught up with just what's on people's minds today. As far as what's coming up in the stream, we're going to do a few COVID things. We're going to talk about environmental destruction. We're going to talk about aid to Israel. So I've taken, when I write the Zionists now on social media, after I write the Zionists, I put a US flag emoji and an Israeli flag emoji. I would encourage other people to do this because Israel, it's like practically the 51st state, but with like less oversight than an actual state for the amount of aid that they get from the U.S. and not just like direct financial aid, but all of the enabling politically in the international arena, the military aid. Israel would not be able to do what it does without the U.S., period. So when we say Zionism, again, I always put the U.S. flag and the Israeli flag after it now, because they do have other enablers, but nobody comes close to what the U.S. is doing. So we're going to talk about that. As far as like where is Israel getting its stuff from, largely the U.S., but there are some other countries as well, whether that's weapons or whether that's non-military supplies. And then we're going to talk about some of the resistance to this. And, there is an election coming up in the U.S., the general bourgeois political election, and it is a presidential election year. So we'll talk about some of that. I've been doing a lot of community posts on this topic. It's really wild to me. We'll get more into this later on, but it's wild to me. So this channel has undergone a lot of growth. We're almost at 27,000 subscribers, which is great. Hello to all the new people. We're getting like 700 to 1,000 new subs a month. And that's, a lot of people that I haven't really interacted with. Particularly compared to a few years ago when this channel was a lot smaller, and I pretty much knew all of the commenters, all of the regulars, and we had multiple interactions because I do read the comments. I also moderate the comments heavily. Sometimes that's just to keep posts on track, like topic-wise. If there's a particular point that I'm trying to make in a community post, and somebody makes even like a valid comment, but it's just off the topic. Let me just tell you, when you're trying to make a point online, it can be really, really hard to get the point you're trying to make, that you're actually intending to make across. I find people just take things in, bizarre ways, misinterpreting or just connecting it to things that I really don't agree with. And so, we moderate both to like prevent dogpiling. So you might even be right, but it's like if another commenter has already replied to a comment, and, I think sufficiently made the point, I'm probably not going to approve tons and tons of other comments that are just dogpiling on that person. I don't think it's productive. So anyway, I do moderate the comments heavily. And so we do, read the comments. I'm aware of what people are writing. And it's really wild to me how many people are subscribed to and ostensibly trying to listen to and learn from a communist channel which primarily does Marxist-Leninist audiobooks and commentary that sort of teaches that curriculum, the history and theory of Marxism, Marxism-Leninism, and then anti-revisionist Marxism-Leninism, in the later 20th century up to today. For a channel which is explicitly focused on that, and it says right in the channel description, that's what this channel is about. And yet, when I post things about like leaving the Democratic Party, the amount of squawking that occurs in the comments is like, I guess it used to be more mind-blowing to me. Like you're subscribed to a communist channel, and like, yet the idea of leaving the Democratic Party makes you squirm. What are you doing here? Like, you don't really belong here at that point. if you're not willing to, at a minimum, make that leap. And then, as far as where the U.S. left gets started, the infrastructure that's here, you have a Green Party, which is a not very well-defined left party. It does have infrastructure in all 50 states. If you're not going to build on that, that to me is the obvious choice as far as a mass party, not a vanguard party. It doesn't use democratic centralism, etc. But that's okay, because you know what? The average American is nowhere near in their consciousness or militancy or, just general readiness. The average American is nowhere near joining a communist party. Okay, I don't really think we have good communist parties in this country. PSL is like sort of the biggest party that styles itself as a vanguard party. They are revisionist with respect to China. They do like the multipolarity stuff, despite knowing better. There's a 2007 article from Brian Becker, one of the co-founders of that party, where he says capitalist restoration, and this was in 2007, capitalist restoration in China is very far along. It's not complete yet, but it's very far along, and it's very unlikely that it's going to be reversed. It's probably just going to continue. So why then do we see PSL with Chow Collective, like in the last couple of years, talking about how China is socialist? Like, they know better. They're pushing it anyway. So yeah, as far as a vanguard party, I don't think there is one. What can we do in terms of like mass party building and get some Marxists in there to do what we can? And then I don't think that that's going to take us all the way to the end, but I do think that people need to take steps at particular points in time to build militancy, to build class consciousness, to engage in increasing levels of struggle. And I think you see more of a vanguard developing from that point. But we have to do something now at the same time. So why not use what's in front of you, imperfect though it may be? But that's sort of the state of the U.S. left in the first place. Is, you had a lot of people backing Bernie Sanders. If you backed Bernie Sanders, why did you not join the Green Party? There should have been tens of millions of people joining the Green Party after that, because Bernie took their platform and slightly watered it down even. So, Bernie Sanders, if he had any backbone whatsoever, he would have been leading people into the Green Party, not the Democratic Party, the dead end of the imperialist 1% controlled Democratic Party. To a certain extent, it's like, I know there's a lot of actual communists who have done the studying. They're like, why are you talking about the Green Party? Well, look around you. We need to do something, get the masses involved in something. They're not going to get involved in a communist party. They did get involved in Bernie Sanders. We saw people filling up stadiums for that. And, okay, well, great. They're ready to support that at this point. Let's work with that. Green Party is your obvious vehicle for doing that. But people won't even do that. And then that's the point where, you have your diehard communist who's, read the complete works of Lenin and Stalin, and, you're doing your sort of advanced, study of the intricacies of, how capitalism was restored, in the USSR and all this stuff. You're studying the intricacies of, guerrilla warfare, military history, and stuff like that. This is nowhere near the average person in the U.S. I'm not saying don't do it. Somebody needs to, read this stuff. Obviously, we're communists. That's where our consciousness is at. But there's a divide when you can't even get people to leave the Democratic Party to join the party that has an identical platform to somebody who was a complete fake and a sheepdog, Bernie, but basically has the same platform. That party's been around for several decades. And what really happens is people just stand around going, oh, the Greens should do this, the Greens should do that. Have you ever gone to a meeting of theirs? Because I think people who are only familiar with Democrat and Republican politics, they think that politics comes out of a can or a vending machine, and it's just something you show up and consume. No. Yeah, that's the way it works with the Democrats and Republicans, who are taking billionaire money, PAC money, corporate money, and then they're just hiring lackeys to carry out imperialist policy. Something like the Greens, that's not how it works. It is made by the random individuals who show up to the meetings. If you're not doing that, they need volunteers, contributors, and people offering to run as candidates. The electoral part of it is one thing. They're also engaged year-round in other community campaigns, whether it's like tenant union support or labor union support or whatever. If you're not showing up to do things like that, then there is no party. It's literally what we make it. It doesn't come out of a can, and it's not going to drop out of the sky like corporate funded. It's not how it works. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I know there's people in the audience who definitely are communists and, reading very advanced topics as far as the history of the international communist movement. And I'm into that too. We try to cover that on the channel. We also need to stay grounded in what are we actually doing in the struggle right now. If the idea is we're trying to build class consciousness and labor militancy and, advance the class struggle to a more intense stage, well, you got to work with what's there and then try to heat it up a little bit. And what we have is very cold right now, but you do have to work with it. Like, just writing it off is not going to get you anywhere, because there's never going to be enough communists for us to just on our own launch the revolution. It really, really doesn't work that way. And if you're thinking that way, that's very immature reasoning, and it's adventurous, really. So, as sad as it is, we have to try to work with what U.S. left there is. And I think it's going to be a multi-stage process over, like, a lot of years. But the longer we take, the longer it's going to take. So start, get doing it. But so that's, I guess what I'm saying is, like, there's a lot of people who are reading their sort of, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, or whatever it is, like these, more advanced topics. And, okay, but what do we do with that? Because, just your study group is not going to do anything on its own. As we know, the masses make history. So how do you talk to the masses? Because what we need in an imperialist country like the U.S., we need to hook up the left of this country with the struggles in the exploited world and make an alliance that, we have to understand that the U.S. is not just feeding off of its own working class, but off of the world, the rest of the world, that it's exploiting also, and be internationalist in that way, and so on. And I think that with the internet now and social media, there's like a lot more consciousness of that. But it's like, is communism even relevant to people? Well, it's as relevant as we make it by, getting involved in where the people are. I remember there was a post a while back from Black Red Guard, blanking on the name of the channel, about getting involved in DSA, because that's where the people were, and that's like where the work was happening. DSA has a lot of problems. Like, part of it is, the more the right wing of DSA is really attached to the Democratic Party. Okay, well, if you get involved, things come up for votes, and you vote against things like that. So, you struggle for an independent proletarian position within those organizations, and you do as much as you possibly can to intensify the class struggle and, again, proletarian independence, and bailing on, the being tied to the imperialist parties. You don't want to be social imperialists, social chauvinists, and definitely the right wing of an organization like DSA. And the Green Party has its own problems with sort of the, opportunity. Well, they work with libertarians sometimes because of the whole duopoly thing. Leads to a lot of problems of contrarianism and populism. These things can be combated, and if you just stand back and just sort of like, revel in your own despair, nothing changes. You have to get out and struggle in these organizations for something better. They are democratic to a certain extent. Like, I've been involved in a number of left organizations. You can actually vote on things. People get real cynical, I think, people have never really experienced any organizations, whether it's their family or anything else, school, where what they think matters at all. But there are organizations out there where you can actually vote on stuff and, get involved, do the thing. If you just stand on the sidelines complaining, literally nothing will change. So anyway, it's wild to me how many people are listening to a communist channel. They can't even pry themselves away from the Democrats. If this is you, we said this on a Vosh video, slap yourself in the face. Don't do a lot of damage, but do it. And just say, I'm wrong, and I need to do better. There you go. Just do it once. It's fine. Um, but really, like, you're making a mistake. That's the point here. You're making a mistake. And, we need to be pulling people off. Already, a lot of people have bailed on both the major imperialist parties. That's great. I mean, there's a number of like other right-wing parties. What is it? The Alliance Party, the Lulberts, the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party. I mean, both the Libertarians and Constitution Party are fascist parties. They're like even further right. They're more neoliberalism. They want to defund everything. There's just a lot of changes that need to happen. People aren't using the tools that are in front of them, though. And, you think you're some master dialectician. What is dialectics? It's the process of changing things, basically. Being in dialogue with things and changing them around. So you think you're some master dialectician, but you're not sort of working with the advanced masses, people who have already bailed on the Democrats, and there's some you think that people are going to go from like they stopped voting for Democrats 2 years ago to like whatever kind of like joining some militia. Probably not. You know what I mean? It's just, you got to work with what's there and make full use of whatever you can get out of whatever is in front of you. We want to intensify class struggle. That means looking at the class struggle that is and taking it to the next level, and then the next and the next and the next. And there's different stages to that, but man, it's like everybody's just standing back and complaining. That's my, I have a particular point of view running this channel. From my vantage, this channel's not huge, but I do see hundreds and hundreds of people between Twitter and Blue Sky and YouTube and everything else. I see a lot of stuff from here. And what I see mainly is, I see dedicated people actually studying, commenting on the videos, wow, that was interesting, etc. And I know that these people are out there looking to apply it in life. And I've heard from a number of people who have started labor unions in their workplace, and they've told me it's because of what they heard on the channel. Like, it's because they got off their ass and did something. And, and it happened to work in their case. I mean, I've tried to start unions in many workplaces, but sometimes you just can't. Like, it's just, situation is not ripe for like a full-on union thing, but you still try to do what you can to swing the balance of power in the workplace toward the workers. You do what you can. A lot of people are not willing to go on strike or anything like that. But again, you do what you can. You do as much as you can with what you've got. And that's what it takes. And I salute the people who have gotten off their ass and have been trying to do something. For the people who are complaining, I get it. Like, you're probably feeling very alienated from growing up in the society. But I guess it's hard for me also because my orientation, I got started with all this like over 20 years ago, when the 2003 Iraq War, I marched in those protests and stuff like that. I was really inexperienced at that point, but there was somebody at a workplace where I had worked, and he was kind of like talking up Ralph Nader, and I was like, oh, there's something else out there. I haven't even heard of this, and I wanted to get involved. So it's like I just looked up meetings and went. And so like that's the way I think, is just, well, it probably needs to be built and it probably needs more engagement and more people, but let's go do it. And so I don't know, I don't understand the mentality of like just sitting back and complaining. I'm a person who gets out there and tries to do that. So, if you respect this channel, if you respect what I'm doing, be more like that, I guess. Like, don't have this mindset of just sitting back and impotently complaining, because you're not going to make anything better that way. You're really, really not. That doesn't mean don't be critical. It means see what you can do, and it will tell you more about what needs to be done. And if you can do it on your own or with a friend or two, then do it. If it takes more people, then try to organize more people, But you gotta like believe that we can do this. If you don't even believe that, then you're not possessed of revolutionary optimism. You've got to believe that something can be done. All right, that's, I guess, it for my like unplanned starting monologue here. Let's catch up with the chat now. Like I said, I was going to do in the first place, and then we'll get into articles. Okay, I see 60 people here. Welcome. And if you feel triggered by what I said, or you feel attacked, and your excuses for inaction are coming out, you got to overcome that. Don't take it out on me. You're wrong. If you're being inactive and you're being a pessimist, you're wrong. Don't try to fight me over that. Fight yourself. Fight your own inner pessimist. It's not productive. How many Palestinians will die in that 30-day window that Biden gave monstrous regimes in U.S. and Israel? Yeah. So basically, if you don't know, Joe Biden, as somebody on social media said, Biden basically warned Israel that if they don't stop robbing banks in 30 days, they're going to stop driving the getaway car. So, yeah. Actually, not just driving, but supplying it. Israel gets arms from the U.S., the U.K., Germany, and Italy. Yeah, I think in order, and we'll cover this, but it's the U.S. gives about 2/3 of the weapons, and then Germany gives almost 1/3, then Italy, U.K., Canada, and India gives them a little bit. Canada is U.S. light. Our politics always tail yours. I mean, yeah, very, very closely aligned countries. It said we have the advantage of your situation. Like Canada has the advantage of seeing where the U.S. is going and knowing that they're going to be there 5 or 10 years later, but people still get fooled by it all. And it tells you how much people are paying attention. We have our own mini Trump wannabe here. You got that whole populist movement out in the West, the Wexit thing. And yeah, I bought my mom's vote for like $100. Joke's on her. It's apparently worth like $1,700. Voting green. Yeah, and as I try to make the point repeatedly, and no matter what I do, this goes over everyone's head every time, no matter how much I spell it out. Not everyone, but I mean, it's astounding to me how many people's heads it goes over. When I say build the party, I mean build the party. Build and vote are two different words. Building a party means doing day-by-day organizing. That's what that means. It doesn't mean voting once a year or every 2 years or 4 years. It means build the party. Show up, get involved, volunteer. If no one shows up, then no one will be in the party. And there will be nobody leading it because it won't exist. You have to show up. This is the difference. Like, the Democrats and Republicans have endless cash thrown at them by the large corporations that they work for. And so they will always have professional servants representing their political interests. But it doesn't work like that for, the more proletarian and petty bourgeois parties. They don't have endless cash. It's like volunteer people who show up and do the thing. If nobody shows up, and so you're like, oh, well, the Green Party in my area, it's not big enough. Yeah, that's because people like you didn't show up to do anything. So congrats. Like, point that finger at yourself because you didn't show up. I have no clue as a non-American how much U.S. leftists are committed to the Democratic Party. It's a difficult conversation, let's put it that way. Comment here, China is closer to fascism than it is to socialism. They are making a semi-planned economy to produce more billionaires. They are making turbo-capitalism with the knowledge of how capitalism works from Marx. China is they're definitely allowing a lot of capitalism, and that capitalism is growing and growing and growing. So I'm not contesting that at all. I think China is a confusing case for a lot of people because it objectively is more advanced in a lot of ways, or more progressive, or whatever you want to call it, than the U.S., for example. So there also still is a lot of really bad conditions in China. There's also really bad conditions in the U.S. But the difference is the U.S. they have very different historical paths. China in the 1950s still had a life expectancy of like 45 or something like that. And, this is preceded by centuries of incredibly bad conditions where people didn't live past their early 30s for the most part. And so U.S. has a very different history. It's a settler colonial country, has internally colonized people. It also has populations it has genocided. It's just like very, very different conditions and path of development. China now, though, like the capitalist rotors have had their way in the party. They still have a lot of things that are at least nominally public, although many people say that they get run just like the state-owned enterprises are run as though they were private companies anyway. But then there's a lot of private companies, which are becoming the largest employers in the cities, and it's growing rapidly if you look at the stats over the last 20 years. So that's definitely a thing. And what people have to understand is that when you allow the bourgeoisie to exist, the point of doing capitalism is to gain wealth, to multiply capital. And as that happens, with more wealth, they get more power. They use that power to pursue their interests in society. And so you have class struggle going on that is going to manifest visible effects in society and in the economy. So anyway, I understand why people are confused by it, because it is definitely different from the U.S. But as Marxist-Leninists, and you run up against this wall sometimes on social media where it's like, well, why don't you just worry about your own country? No, as Marxists, we have analytical tools to understand different economies. That's liberalism, to be like, if you're not Chinese, you can't understand whether China's doing capitalism or not. No, I mean, if you study Marxism, then you can understand whether China's doing capitalism or not. And so I think as more people do understand that becomes apparent to more and more people. And it's just a matter of time before the bourgeoisie grows in enough power and their needs as a more established capitalist, advanced monopoly capitalist, or in Marxist-Leninist terms, imperialist country starts, acting more and more obviously like in the ways that the more established imperialist countries do, because it's a need dictated by their economic system. So anyway, this comes up every time, but moving along. Democrats in the U.S. are a far-right party, absolutely. No way an actual leftist would have anything to do with them. That's the problem, though, is like a lot of people in the U.S. styling themselves leftists have really no idea what they're talking about. And I agree. That's why I'm saying it's like you've subscribed to a communist channel. I don't know if a single word of this has sunk in, because why are you arguing with me about the Democratic Party and like clinging on to them? The current Democratic president is funding a genocide. Yeah, Kim, but Trump will do more genocide. People have to realize at a certain point, they're both so far beyond the line, they're just out of bounds, But it's having that conversation, is trying to pry people off of that party. And, I don't know how many of these are genuine and how many of them are like, Democratic paid online cyber operatives. But, I mean, you hear this sometimes from real people. That said, you also hear from a lot of people that they're seeing through it. So, I mean, it's good, but it's still amazing to me how many people I was just struggling with some asshat in the comments yesterday and today about it. And they're like, wow, you're being really toxic. You're voting for a genocide. No further comment. Starting to study the IWW organizing guides more. Good. They are, I took the trouble to record those because they actually have good information on guerrilla union organizing. If you get involved with a larger union like an SEIU or stuff like that, they have a different approach, which tends to be more, they involve lawyers and things like that. The IWW approach is really just about building power on the shop floor. People get a lot of times wrapped up and, oh no, we're going to lose the NLRB. So workers' power does not come from a capitalist agency set up to moderate and throttle the labor movement. That's not where your power comes from. If you lose the NLRB, you still have power. It comes from your ability to mobilize people on the shop floor to make the company do what you want rather than what the shareholders want. And, directors, whatever the structure of the company is. That it's about, do you have power to reflect what the workers want rather than what management and the owners want? And it doesn't come from the NLRB. NLRB can be useful sometimes in like getting back pay for people who were wrongfully fired. The overall problem is the labor movement is very weak. People are not building organization and they're not class conscious to the level that we need to be. Because believe me, your employer is class conscious and organized. Will there be a Hanging with the Sock Dems reaction video? Good point, because yes, there will be. I was actually going to do that Sam Cedar Vanguard video. So thanks for sending that. I have that waiting in the wings to do that later on. My town has county-wide Republican and Democratic parties. I'm just working to build something to counter those two. Who have you talked to so far? Bit of a tangent, but for anyone that knows who Laith Marouf is, I do not. He's been recently saying Americans who support the Green Party this election cycle are being childish. I mean, people say that for a lot of reasons, but I think doing absolutely nothing but complaining is more childish. But instead, calling on people to rise up in armed struggle right now. Yeah, they're not going to do that. If they weren't, again, the amount of people who even vote Green is minuscule. And, in other words, it takes like a lot of dedication for people to even do that by U.S. standards. Whereas a lot of people they won't even be bothered to do anything. They don't, they're above it all, whatever. You're not going to get them to rise up in armed struggle. You just literally aren't. So face facts. You're not going to get them to do that. What is more likely is, you persuade them to join a labor union. People need a lot more experience with struggle, and they need a process to work out their fears and build their confidence and where they stand in all this, etc. Before they're going to do something like that. That's so not realistic at this point. Open your eyes. Anyway, I don't think he understands the level of groundwork that needs to be accomplished to even attempt. Okay, yeah. Are we in a revolutionary moment in the United States? No. Absolutely not. We're not even close. No, we're not in a revolutionary moment right now. You have a lot of people who are angry, but there's very little. I mean, there's like a union uptick from a century-long low a few years ago. There's a slight uptick now. Great. If you think this is a revolutionary moment, man, your whole compass, your whole standards are just so out of whack. You need perspective on this. You need recalibration. So yeah, I have no idea who that is. Let me look that up. No one's ever mentioned this person on social media or in the comments to me ever. I have no idea who they are. Black Agenda Report. Okay. You might want people to do that. Is that realistic? No. I love when people say, why do you have to bring politics into it? They're already here. They're already here. Yeah, because they're already here. I didn't bring it in. I just pointed it out. Exactly. Education and action are long, hard, interactive, active pursuit processes. Populaces as a whole are lacking desire and free time in education. This is a multi-generational process if we are lucky enough for the earth to survive that long. Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about, these are not easy things. You know what's easy? Reading a book. That's easy. Actually, building the movement, very difficult, You can read plans to build a space shuttle. Actually, launching it, much more difficult. The most difficult thing for me in joining a party is just getting them to contact me back. What did I say about people showing up? These parties need... I mean, yeah, sometimes that's just irresponsibility. Sometimes it's an actual lack of staff hours, because not enough people are already there, and the parties also, or organization, is not allocating their resources effectively. So, yeah. Any advice on coping with leftist organizations' hypocrisy with regard to COVID? Yeah, hammer on it. Introduce resolutions, etc. I know it probably requires an attitude adjustment on my part. I just find the COVID denialism so irritating and demoralizing. Keep bringing it up. Do educational campaigns within the organization. Introduce measures. Get the organization to vote. See if you can get them passed. Engage in struggle on that issue. I think the call for the 2028 general strike will be a great opportunity for expanding class consciousness. So we may differ on that. I was actually having a conversation about this with some other people. Uh, so it struck me as bizarre, first of all. Why are they calling for a general strike literally 4 years from now? You don't need, I mean, to be in that position of like a Shawn Fain and be like the most prominent labor organizer. First of all, this is a labor aristocracy. We're going to cover an article later on about how people are going on about the ILA strike, and it's social chauvinist because they're still handling military shipments during their strike. So, and then Shawn Fain is out there saying that Kamala Harris is a, quote, warrior for the working class. Yeah, these people are not for real. So you look at it and it's like, why are you calling a general strike for 4 years from now when you're the head of a union? If you were making that a priority, maybe, 2 years would make a little more sense. I know these things take time. I mean, it doesn't work by hashtag general strike, but if you're actually the head of a very prominent union, that's something that, anyway, just where did this 4 years thing come from? Turns out that's when their current contract is expiring, and they're just trying to set it up so that if like their next contract doesn't get passed, they're making the threat now that they could do like a general strike. Also, that's another presidential election year, and given the proximity to the Democratic Party, I would see that as basically an extension of bourgeois, of imperialist politics and bourgeois electoralism in kind of the worst way of just backing the Democrats and, getting up some kind of struggle within the labor movement, but then funneling it into the Democratic Party. That's, to me, where that's coming from. But anyway, continuing the comment, where I work, we unionized many locations across the state and are currently bargaining a master contract together. That's excellent. I pushed to have our contract end on April 30th of 2028 to put us in line with that. So far, it is still in the contract. Yeah, it is what it is. I guess my point is this. Do you know how much can happen between now and then? I need to see a lot more before I take those people seriously. It's not that I don't believe in a general strike or anything like that. I'm deeply suspicious of somebody who's going to call Kamala Harris a warrior for the working class. That's kind of an absurd statement. And so, yeah, I don't take things like that seriously. They have an angle you're not going to like. And we do need these things, but it needs to be organized, again, with independent proletarian initiative and class organization. Doing nothing will yield nothing. Doing something will yield something. That is basically my point. We're in an environment now where really not enough is happening in general, like just quantitatively. And, the capitalists are doing a lot. The workers are not really doing anything in an organized way. Where they are, it's oftentimes feeding into capitalist initiatives. We need more data. I want people to go out there, give it your best shot. Attempt to do some study. Obviously, that's why we're doing the channel. Study the history of the international communist movement. Don't just reinvent the wheel. Study it, understand Marxism-Leninism, try to take it, come up with ideas, analyze your situation, go into your organizations that are around you that you're a part of, apply that, bring it to your local situation where the class struggle is happening everywhere. Apply it to your conditions. Give it your best shot, apply your best idea, and learn from it. And everybody else will learn from it. Write articles about it. Send them in to me. I'll cover them. And you know what I mean? Like, this is the what this movement can do is study the history, look at our situation, come up with a hypothesis of something to try that will intensify the class struggle and win something, some advance for the working class. Put it into practice, document what happens, write it up, and share the results. Okay, this is science. It's the scientific method, and that's what we do. But there's just not enough happening. There's not sort of enough experiments being conducted, not enough struggle waged. And we need more results. I would rather see, tens of millions of people go ahead, join the Green Party. And then, if you have to learn the hard way why we need democratic centralism, we can learn it, because, or unless people are just, willing to adopt something like that more quickly. But I think people will get involved in the struggle and they'll come back to the same truths that have been discovered over the course of struggle in the international communist movement for almost 2 centuries now. But if people are outside of that and they're not really active in struggle, they're going to not really know what's going on. And so, if we have to make all the same mistakes again, there is a faster way. But if we have to do it, I'd rather do it that way than do nothing at all. And, as communists and advisors to the mass proletarian movement, it's going to give us more to comment on. And so people learn. That's the point. So people learn, and then we win. I mean, winning really is the point. But you got to learn in order to win. And how do you learn? You can learn from books, also learn from your experience. So absolutely, I would just like to see more happening at this point. And again, if you're trying to organize in the Democratic Party, it's not working. Let me just help you with that. It's not working. You're getting nowhere. The Democratic Party is going further right. You're not making anything better inside the Democratic Party. You're not. So stop. You have to go outside the Democratic Party. Look at Bernie Sanders. He got buried. Buried. It didn't work, okay? I don't know how many times this has to happen before people get it. That's not going to work. There's other things outside the Democratic Party that have a chance of working. They need more people. They need you. They need more involvement. And yeah, standing around and complaining helps absolutely no one. It gives the capitalists more time to do what they want to do. Anyway, I'm currently in the process of finding a DSA caucus. Might have to move. I didn't realize how important Nader was during Watergate. Holy shit, they were afraid of him. Yeah, they're not really afraid of us anymore. Kill the liberal in your mind. There you go. Uproot bourgeois thinking in your own mind. Absolutely. Finally caught a stream. Wanted to say thanks for the Corsi-Rosenthal box recommendation. That's an air filter. If you want a cheap air filter, $100 with tax. Box fan, 4 MERV 13 furnace filters, and the box, and a roll of duct tape. Corsi-Rosenthal. Corsi-Rosenthal box. You can find a video on YouTube of how to make one. And again, I think I made 2 of them, $90 I think each. Very high quality air filter that can filter out virus and dust and all the other stuff, but even as small as viruses like SARS coronavirus 2, which causes COVID. So yeah, I built one and I think I feel a difference. Do you usually leave it on 24/7? No, I don't. It depends on your situation. Like, if you live by like a really busy road where there's a lot of like road pollution, you might want to leave it on all the time. I'll run it for a while, a little bit like a vacuum cleaner for the air. Like I'll sometimes, the box fan I have, it's like off and then 1, 2, 3. The higher the number, the more intense the fan blows. Sometimes I just leave it on 3 for like 10 minutes and it sucks up all the stuff in the air, and then I kind of just leave it off for a while. So that's what I do. So sometimes I leave it on for longer periods. It really depends on the application. But I think you don't necessarily need to leave it on 24/7. It depends on what your situation is and sort of how much particulate matter is being introduced into your air. Like at a certain point, your air is clean. You could probably turn it off for a while. So yeah. But then if you're like, folding laundry, whatever, it depends how many people are coming and going in the room. So yeah. Canada is working with the U.S. to destabilize Haiti and Laos. Yeah, they're like the U.S. junior, basically. Canada's foreign policy comes straight out of Washington. The only easy way into Canada is the temporary foreign worker program, which is heavily abused by capital to get cheap, abusable, and disposable labor. Yeah, I mean, they factor in all kinds of things, age, it's quite stringent, let's put it that way. I say I do more theory than any practice, mostly because of years of depression, but you're right, people need to get out there and not just sitting on their ass. It's the G.O.Y.A principle. Get off your ass. G.O.Y.A. Oh boy. For real though, like, it's, the thought in your head is not going to really, you got to bring it to life. You bring it to life in the world. That's what this is about. Here's a question that I don't know if it's helpful. What kind of beginner volunteer work would you recommend if someone needed to volunteer instead of being out where they're needed? I would say go to different organizations which look interesting to you, ask them what they need, because any dedicated, organizer there has stuff they want to do, but not enough hands to, throw at it. So ask them what they need and see what you want to do. That's what I recommend. Talk to people. That's why I say it's at the end of so many of the videos, network with your local left, because there's going to be projects that people who are more hooked in know about that might not be openly advertised online. Not that they're like illegal, but it's just there may be other stuff going on that isn't really advertised as well. Don't assume because you're online that you know everything that's going on. Even like within the realm of like the all the the nonprofits and other things that sort of distribute government aid money, tons of free money is given out every year, but it never gets advertised. And so there's like websites, and I wouldn't really recommend this for like political activism, but there's a website, findhelp.org. You put in your zip code, and then there's categories for different stuff, like getting money for rent, getting like free medical dental care. There's a lot of different programs, and you just have to call them up and see if it applies to you. And a lot of times there may be something that might be helpful. Some of them will restrict you out of it, but something works for you. I guess my point is just there's a ton of stuff going on that they don't advertise. So you got to like basically pound the pavement, make phone calls, talk to people, and then ask them. If somebody can't help you, say, well, here's my situation. Do you know of somebody who might be able to help me? Because people in the role of organizer, they know other people who are organizers, and they, even if they can't help you, they might know of somebody else, or they might have heard of another program that nobody else has heard of that doesn't have any money to advertise, that they can put you in touch with. And it might work for you and it might not, but you got to go do it. It's just not going to be handed to you. You know what I mean? So people really need to develop a mentality of not being afraid to like make the phone calls and talk to the people, because that's probably the only way you're really going to find out about what's going on that you can get involved in. Or there might be something just starting up that somebody's waiting to hear from a third or fourth person before they go live with it. And if you never ask them, it may never get off the ground. So, that's why I say network with people and, make yourself available and exchange contact info with people. I mean, use common sense about who you feel like you're comfortable with and trust. But if we don't network, then, people can have the best idea in the world. There's also kooky ideas out there too, but you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know people, you can't get anything done. So that's what I would say is go and say, hey, I'm a leftist, or however you want to introduce yourself, or just, I'm interested in the kind of work your organization is doing, and I'm interested in, whatever topic it is, social justice. I'd like to help out. And they'll say, great, we need people to help out. And so, yeah, and then, but if you're going to do it. Commitment matters. But, yeah, that's what I would suggest. There's tons of stuff going on in your area you just don't know about. You got to meet people, talk to people, and say, hey, I'm looking to help out, and do you know of anything that's going on? So, yeah. To be honest, I think China learned a lot from revisionism in the USSR and how going down such a pedal-to-the-metal route would result in dissolution. Actually, from what I've read, Gorbachev was largely inspired by China. So I think that was actually the other way around. I don't think it had anything really to do with that. And I think what happened in the USSR is more complex than that. But... yeah, China, to me, it seems like ended up being a really, really negative influence on the international communist movement. Why is all the discourse on electoral politics, whether it's arguing over abstention, or lesser evilism, when communists aren't a large enough voting bloc in the U.S. to matter anyway? Well, actually, that's a lot of what I was saying. Is there isn't even like a mass social democratic leftist party that is reliable to get people in, where you could get people involved in independent struggles for labor unions and tenant unions and all the other things that need to happen. People are still in the Democratic Party. So, yeah, communists aren't a large enough voting bloc, and that's not what this is about in the first place. It's not about, we need to get all the communists to vote a certain way. If you want that, go talk to CPUSA. It's about, how do we take the left-leaning masses, the advanced masses who exist now, and help them into an organization they are ready to join to make the most out of their striving for whatever concept of liberation they have now. Like I said, people came out by the stadium full to rally around Bernie, and he basically stole the Green Party's platform. So, okay, we know people can at least do that if there's a vehicle for them to organize into, to channel those efforts into. So wouldn't it be better to have that vehicle than to not have that vehicle? I think it would. And then we as communists can advise and assist and try to make more communists out of it as the struggle intensifies. And we say, well, we saw a struggle like this. And then you get people in that movement who are trying to hug more to bourgeois politics, and then people who realize we have to move beyond capitalism and who have a more revolutionary standpoint. But if it doesn't progress to that level, I don't know that you're going to get tens of millions of people who really start reaching the conclusion that, yes, a radical struggle against capitalism must be waged. And so it's about building that mass vehicle for getting people off of the sidelines, off of the bench. You know, Bernie pulled people off the bench into a stadium and then dropped them on their heads, fed them into the Democratic Party, where nothing positive really can come of it, because that party is controlled by the corporations that are responsible for all the problems. So, and they work in their own interest. They're part of the system of private property that is not in most of our interests. So, it's not about communists as a voting bloc. It's just about, hey, U.S. left, you're standing around talking about doing something, complaining about something, and there's something right in front of you. It's called the Green Party, and you won't get off your ass and show up. And I'm just reminding people that if you don't get off your ass, no one's going to fucking do it for you. And we're going to be in the situation 20 years from now, just like we were 20 years ago when I was getting involved in this. I've seen people get angrier in the last 20 years. I've seen people, there is a growth of like DSA or the IWW and things like that. There are organizations growing, like Occupy, there was a big boost of kind of soft left stuff after that. Great, it's better than nothing. And we've seen weird opportunists come out of that. And we've also seen, some of us have come out of that. So, and this is the way that the left goes. Some people are still captured by bourgeois thought and they become social chauvinists, and other people press on and they become revolutionary Marxists. But again, without that struggle happening, without the discourse, without the organizing, it all goes so much more slowly. So my point is, no, we do need tens of millions of people involved, and they're not going to join a communist party. It's not going to happen. Those are vanguard parties for the absolute, the tip of the spear. People who are have the sharpest class consciousness and have done the most study and so on. But you do have many people who already agree with the Green Party platform, but they won't get off of their ass. And so that's all I'm saying is, let's help them get off their asses, and something might start happening, which we can then build on. But if the struggle is paralyzed, then just time ticks on and the capitalists just have their way. And the thing against lesser evilism is when I post on the community tab to, hashtag DemExit, and at a minimum, and I make a point of including that qualifier, but at a minimum, build the Green Party. You're ready to join a Marxist organization, fine. I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying at a minimum, do the Green Party. It's right there. It's in all 50 states. There's people, if you call the number, if you send them an email, somebody's going to answer that. Build on it. And then maybe you'll be the person answering the phone or the email on the other end of that 6 months from now. And, each one help one. And it's just going to keep going like that. and we build a network. That's what this is about. They have the money, we have the people, the labor, and we can use that to serve our interests. But it's about getting people out of the democratic kind of nonsense. Democratic Party doesn't even believe in democracy. They do all kinds of legal dirty tricks to get the Greens off the ballot. They a lot of times oppose any kind of like ranked choice voting. The Democratic Party, so-called, is against democracy. Even like limited bourgeois democracy, they're against it. They don't want proportional representation, nothing. I mean, there's nothing democratic about them. They don't have internal democracy. It's all run by corporations. You saw what they did to Bernie. I mean, Bernie went along with it, but you saw what they did. I mean, Bernie could have waged a much more pitched struggle against that. But instead, he took the millions of dollars that people in the grassroots donated to him and threw it away. He threw it away by rolling over for the undemocratic Democratic Party when they fucked over everybody who was in that movement. Okay, get out of that party. Get out of that party. But instead of doing the logical thing of staying engaged and just going over to the Greens, which is where Bernie took his platform from, basically, they just either went into the Democrats or they faded back into the background and they're silent again. They went back into the woodwork. What is the fucking point of that? Stay engaged. But instead, in unison, you have tens of millions of people across the country going, the Greens can't win. There won't be enough votes. And it's, again, tens of millions of people in unison, and it's deafening. And it's like, can you not see that if everyone who'd said that just got involved, it would be this gigantic thing, And it's lunacy. I've never understood this. And so I just keep bringing it up until it ends, because it's lunacy. It's absolute madness from my perspective. I don't get it. I've never gotten it. I don't know if I ever will. But I will keep talking about it, because what the fuck are people waiting for? What are you waiting for? The perfect Democratic Party candidate? Wake up! Your life is ticking by. Gaza is being razed to the ground, just to take one example. We don't have time. My wife is a leftist voting for Kamala because Project 2025. We argue about that quite often. Your wife's an idiot. Sorry, but it's true. Somebody shared a meme a while ago. Here, let me put it on the screen. It's, if you're worried about Project 2025, wait until you hear about literally right now. Okay? I mean, I have something to tell you called the Project for the New American Century. They're talking about militarizing space. They're talking about full spectrum dominance of the U.S. military across the entire globe for an entire century. Guess what? That was 25 years ago. They already did that. It's crazy to me. So actually, on this topic, the Democratic Party was out there touting the endorsement. It's shocking. Touting the endorsement of Dick Cheney. And then for a day, this was like earlier last week, you had Democratic Party operatives out there on social media going, where's George W. Bush? Is he a coward? What? Bush and Cheney were the quote-unquote Trump of the 2000s. In fact, I would say they were far, far worse. They ushered in an entirely new paradigm called the global war on terror. For people who are younger, you might not realize this, but the Department of Homeland Security didn't exist until the global war on terror. And so they did this total revamping of the government. Everything was about counterterrorism, but no, it was just really about fascization and increasing surveillance and military conquest and everything else. They were out there. The Democratic Party was out there talking about, oh, Trump's this menace. And look, Dick Cheney is voting for us. That's such a good thing. No, it isn't. I don't know what it is. There's some particular amnesia this country has about the 2001 to 2009 period when Bush and Cheney were in office. No one ever talks about it. But it was utterly vile. And Trump was a bumbling fool in comparison to what the George W. Bush administration did. I mean, they were slick. and they got it done. But they come out with these boogeymen like Project 2025 and whatever else. Meanwhile, you have like one of the architects of the war on terror endorsing the Harris campaign, and they are not just lapping it up. They're like, what about W? Get him on board too. Holy shit, you think this is the lesser evil? What do you even... I can't follow it. Like, I can't follow the thread. It's so far to the right. It is so far beyond the bounds of any kind of discussion that makes any kind of sense at all. They keep coming out with stuff that just... It's utterly mind-blowing. I mean, utterly. So, but this is where we are. It's complete... Here we go. Another meme. Total madness. I have the utmost disdain for the people who openly identify with the label leftist. Anarchist, communist, Marxist, cool. Leftist, no thanks. You're a Democrat who wants universal health care, trying to pass your politics off as being much better than they actually are. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I use it just to refer to the broader left generally, but, and there's a time for that, and there's a time to differentiate, in my opinion. You're voting for a genocide is exactly what I tell my wife. I again, it's like, what is the mental block that people have on, no matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, it keeps getting worse for the last half century. Things have never gotten better, really. There's some things here and there, I mean, but it's even the things that happen better, they tend to happen more on like a state, local level, and then kind of percolate up somewhat. Like, it'll be through like ballot initiatives and things like that don't even go through the political parties. And then when they do get enacted, the political parties, like, they drag their feet on implementing what the people voted for, whether it's minimum wage or whatever. So, the things that have gotten better have been despite the Democrats and Republicans, not because of them. They work together. They're part of the same system. The Democrats have been in power since 1828. That's almost 2 fucking centuries. This is their system as much as it is anyone's. They are responsible for what's happening. And they do good cop, bad cop. If you're not familiar with that routine, look it up. It's a very well-known psychological trick. There's 2 cops interrogating somebody. They're both there to bust you, but they use different tactics. One is real rough, gets in your face, insults you, makes you uncomfortable. The other one is nicer, and they're trying to get you to open up. But they're working together on the same goal. It's the same fucking thing. It's the same thing. I don't know why people are having such a hard time with this. I truly do not. And so it's like things just aren't changing because people keep feeding these 2 parties and they're not pulling out in the sufficient numbers to create a change. And we need more people to just take this stand. Get off the teat of the Democratic Party. For fuck's sake, you're not helping anything by supporting them. You're not. You are supporting a party that is currently waging a genocide among the many things that they're doing, and overall is standing in the way of things massively improving. We could have such a better society, and the Democrats are part of the reason we don't. They are there to block that kind of change. They really are. 40% of the Arab population in the U.S. are voting green, according to CARE National. Do the math. I was really happy to see that because I'm like, finally, this is going somewhat more mainstream. I want to see that. Absolutely. I totally applaud that. And I really want to see that because, again, I've been doing this for like 25 years, and wondering when the fuck everybody else was going to catch up. It's lonely out on the fringes. And the other problem with it being fringe, with not enough people being involved, is it gives... When bad ideas get introduced, there's not enough people to combat them. And so, yeah, it needs to be brought off the fringes and more reflective of where the masses are at. But again, like I said, the masses already support. There's huge amounts of people who supported Bernie Sanders. Again, took the Green Party platform, watered it down slightly. Look, if you like Bernie Sanders, literally go register as a Green right now. If there's a Green Party in your state, go do that. Unless you're doing some Marxist thing, whatever. But at a minimum, if you're not doing anything else, go register as a Green, go contact your state party and say, hi, I am on the left in the U.S., I'm anti-war, I oppose the genocide, I'm for workers' rights and I want to get involved in your party. I want to volunteer. When's your next meeting? Whatever. It's right there. But if you don't pick up the phone and call, send repeated emails, whatever you have to do, it's just not going to happen. We have to build it. But yeah, it's great that, I saw a lot of pictures of, Jill Stein is not my favorite. The Green Party has outlived the need for Jill Stein. I would really like to see somebody else in there. But unfortunately, they're just, that was who the party voted for in their primary to be the representative. They've got a new guy I hadn't seen before as their vice presidential candidate, though. But it was really heartened to see Jill Stein with a lot of Muslim voters taking pictures and things. Great. Make it more mainstream. Get the American masses involved, and we can do something. As communists, ultimately, we're going to want a lot more. But again, until you get the masses more engaged in something, how are you going to build on that? How are you going to get more? It's not going to happen. You don't go from nothing to people are just I can't do. I know. I'll engage in. No, it's absurd. People don't flip that way overnight. No strike is illegal if you win. I've been reaching out to the union in my town as well as various student groups at the college. Good, keep it up. I never went to college myself due to poverty, but I'm still in that age group. Don't count yourself out. A lot of people go to college after traditional age. You may be able to go eventually one way or another. And I'll give a plug here for community college as well. That definitely is. A lot of community colleges are really cheap, and that's a good way to get a lot of credits under your belt, a lot of which will transfer to a 4-year school. Not all programs are excellent, but I do think that there's definitely a lot you can gain. I mean, you can learn languages well and practice them a lot. I mean, there's a concrete skill. You can study all kinds of things for relatively cheap at community college and then, use it to get a degree. Whether that helps you get a job or not, I mean, I'm not sure that in my case, getting degrees, unless you're getting a degree that is tied to some kind of professional license, it may or may not help you get a job. But it can definitely make you a better critical thinker. It can make you a better writer, again, depending on the program and depending on your instructors and things like that. But if you make it work for you somehow, you're in a class that's terrible, drop it. If you can take something else instead, drop it. Don't waste your money, and don't, give yourself a horrible time. If you're in a program that you think is, your spider sense is telling you is not good, quit it. Even, if you have to wait a while, regroup, make a new plan, find another program, there's another program, But I think engaging in things like that, there's that acronym NEET, N-E-E-T, not in education, employment, or what is it? Not in employment, education, or training. And there's a lot of people that fall into that and that really do not have much social engagement at all. And it can be a really bad time. There have been times where I've been NEET in the past. This is a rough economy, and I've lived in places where the economy was not good, or it was seasonal or whatever, and just, really struggling to make more than $8 an hour. And at that point, it's I remember, I think I've said it before in streams, it's I can either not work and not make money, or work and make money, but I don't want to work and not make money. So, in that case, I'd rather just not work and at least have the free time, and do something to scrape by. But, yeah, being NEET kind of sucks, and, it's if you can get the money to do something, even if you're taking 1 or 2 classes part-time, it can make the rest of your week kind of a little bit brighter, give you something to hang on to a little bit, and opportunity to meet people, and just get more ideas about, there's stuff you can get involved with at the school, meet people, whatever, branch out from there. It can help. Yes, it'll cost some money, but again, you go to a findhelp.org or something. Sometimes there are programs that'll pay for it. Look around, make phone calls. If you think we're in a revolutionary moment, what are you going to do when we actually are? Yeah, I'd be. If anybody wants to make the case we're in a revolutionary moment, I'd definitely like to hear that. We could then, respond with some criticism as to why we're not. But You need class consciousness plus organization plus a society-wide crisis like an economic crash or something like that for a revolutionary moment. And, as we've discussed, and I was going to cover today, I chose other articles for today instead, but I do think there's definitely going to be another large crash. The soft landing, I think, is out the window. China's already bailing out its bank system. India just had a big problem in their economy. Their industrial activity is way down. Japan having banking issues as well. And it's already officially spread to like Germany and other countries that have shown recessionary status. When the U.S. formally goes into recession, and the U.S. already hiring is slowing down, companies stop hiring before they start firing. And all of this is adding up to like this emerging sometime in the next year. It's slow. It's been really slow. And the pandemic put a lot of, large monkey wrench in the works as far as the economic cycle. But, we know it's cyclical. It catches up eventually. I think in this case, when it does, it will be big and it will be global. And I think that BRICS will be heavily affected as well. Because you do capitalism and you're vulnerable to the business cycle. It's just how it works. You will have crises of overproduction, in other words. Yeah, so in other words, thinking that just a crisis is enough for a revolutionary moment is wrong. Yeah, you also need class consciousness and organization. Otherwise, you can't mobilize during the crisis. If you don't have class consciousness, people won't see a need to strive for an alternative system. And there's only one alternative, socialism, because there's only two possibilities for running an advanced industrialized society: capitalism or socialism. So if you don't have the class consciousness, you won't see a need to get out of capitalism. And if you don't have the organization, you won't be able to. And then again, the crisis is just sort of the rallying point where people decide, they throw their hands up and go, enough with this fucking bullshit. I'm going to do something. Remember, Lenin thought he would not live long enough to see the revolution. Be positive, learn, and do. Yeah, do as much as you can, because you know what? Doing something also feels a lot better than doing nothing, because you gotta use, and it's not just about, feelings. It's, you should be doing something. Like, it feels bad to not do things because your brain knows you should be doing something. And if you're not engaged in that, you're not sort of on the process of engaging with your own growth and destiny and all the things that you need to do. So it feels bad. It feels much better to be like, what do I need to go, and then go do it, instead of putting it off. That's going to build up a lot of tension and bitterness. Don't do that. G.O.Y.A, get off your ass. I saw that some areas in California brought back mask mandates. I haven't seen that. That fucking UAW strike, yeah. Striking in a way that doesn't buck the system, how innovative. I mean, so the ILA also made an allowance to continue to work on cruise ships because they didn't want to create enmity. You want popular support, and especially when the labor movement is still fragile and is still trying to build its way back into becoming like a household supported thing from being marginal, which it has been in recent decades. The amount of people in the 20-teens who I heard say like, unions, like they were useful at one point in time, but they've run their course. Jobs are safe now and pay is fair now and whatever else. Yeah, no. First of all, unions have two purposes. One is improving day-to-day, year-to-year conditions. Two is ending capitalism. Not all unions embrace that other part, but that is the point of building worker organizations. When you get to a certain point, you realize that your goals can only be achieved on the other side of the capitalism-socialism divide. So you got to move on into socialism to A, keep the gains that you have, and B, complete the process that you started. So anyway, there's things that unions will do strategically, like, okay, you don't want to piss off the people who booked vacation tickets and you're going to do the cruise ship. Okay, reasonable. But you're going to just like handle military equipment? Yeah, no, that's complicity in empire and genocide. that's not supportable. So, because like I said, that falls under number 2, ending capitalism. Labor unions are the primary instrument of proletarian class organizing. They're the main proletarian class organizations, labor unions. The political struggle and the political party grows out of that. And after the workers get more consciousness, then they seek to conquer state power. Again, read What Is to Be Done by Lenin, because it's kind of all about this. But, that you got to do that. And definitely it's not in workers' interests to do that kind of, social imperialism, military support with organized labor. That's fucked up beyond belief. My local Greens linked to a defunct Facebook that's like 6 years old. Keep looking because, unfortunately, these are volunteer-run projects. A lot of times the waste doesn't get cleaned up like that. Look for your state party. Look for a neighboring state party. They might be able to tell you what's going on, etc. Just, again, pick up the phone, keep, or email or whatever, and keep contacting people until you know what's going on. You're probably going to learn a lot in the process. Have conversations with people. Don't just do yes or no questions. But talk to people. Find out what's going on. Network. Put yourself out there within your comfort level. But I mean, and trust your instincts. But still, nothing ventured, nothing gained here. I saw stuff calling for a general strike in 2020 or 2021. I don't recall exactly. Talked to an IWW representative. For people who don't know, IWW.org, Industrial Workers of the World, or the Wobblies as they're sometimes known, was a radical labor union co-founded by Eugene Debs and other. It was kind of like a union super group. They took a bunch of existing unions and made this one big union labor federation out of many different unions in all different industries, whether it was mine workers or transportation or whatever. The idea was to have a revolutionary anti-capitalist union that was organizing all the workers into one union that could strike together. Like if you've heard, an injury to one is an injury to all, the idea behind industrial unionism was to organize the whole industry so that really workers really could be united, and an injury to one, everyone could respond. So anyway, he said that the general strike was not organized or prepared. And that's to be expected. When your unionization is at historic lows, why are you calling for a general strike? There's a lot more groundwork to be done first. So, And as far as people are going to be well, didn't you just say, why call it 4 years in it? Yeah. If you want a general strike in 2028, there's no need to call it in 2024. Just do the fucking legwork. Then when you get closer, then call it, amazing. The amount of, quote, leftists I saw defending the longshoremen still shipping weapons was very disheartening. No shit. And so this is why we got to dig in and why we got to do more dividing lines. For example, have you DemExited yet? If you haven't even DemExited yet, don't talk to me. I mean, literally, don't talk to me. If you haven't DemExited, you're not doing the bare minimum. This is, in some ways, the Greens over DSA is at least the Greens aren't going to tell you to vote Democrat. Now, a lot of DSA people won't also, and there's nothing stopping DSA from working with the Greens, making that your party instead of fucking Democrats. But if you haven't even DemExited, don't even talk to me. And then there's other kind of litmus tests or dividing lines that people will wage struggle over. So apparently we do need to have a conversation about social imperialism and the labor movement being complicit in U.S. militarism. That's a conversation we need to have. So go out there and have it. Wage the struggle. Argue with people. I mean, be persuasive. Don't just get mad and shout people down or whatever. That's not the point. I mean, be persuasive. Present arguments, evidence, and reasoning, and make the point that this is not something for leftists to defend. In that case, it's what is the point of being a, quote, leftist? All you want is to, make the very internationally exploitative U.S. a little bit more internally equitable. How does that, that's going to prop up global inequality in a way that is not actually good. And I think, that's a reasonable thing. Like, I think a lot of people can be convinced of that, but they might have to hear somebody else say it first, and then they'll just go, oh, duh, why didn't I think of that? Other people might be a harder struggle, and maybe those people end up, like the folks in our meme there on the screen. Does Shawn Fain have a plan to get other unions on board? No, time to move on from that plan. It seemed like he was, quote, in some discussion with other unions to get their contracts expiring on that date too. But then it's like, well, if they get their contracts, then nothing happens. Is it at least good that we have the next 4 years to try to organize and possibly co-opt it? We've had the last 100 years. You know what I mean? No. I mean, letting more time go by is not good. And a lot of people in Gaza, they don't have time. They're dead. Talking about COVID, over 1 million people in this country alone, already dead. They don't have any more time. Their time ran out. No, it's not good. Whenever someone calls for a general strike, like the hashtag general strike thing, I imagine Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap cards like, I activate general strike. Yeah, and unfortunately, this isn't, just a magical incantation. There's like a lot of stuff you actually have to do to make that reality. Cognitive dissonance. Words without action get nothing done. Absolutely. Are there good resources on organizing temp workers? This is the difficult thing. You would probably need to organize temp workers in an external organization. So this is like kind of a problem that unions have fought for a while, is the quote-unquote job sharks. Like Labor Ready is one of them that I've seen before. So there's places that kind of like organize temp stuff and Labor Ready, People Ready staffing services. There's like a variety of staffing services that are referred to as job sharks. You would have to organize people like outside of that rather than in the company. Maybe there's a way you can build something into a union contract if the company also hires temp workers. As far as organizing temp workers, so the IWW, again, because they do industrial organizing and it's a mass membership organization, it's not tied to a specific workplace. So you can join that whether or not you're employed, whether or not you work in an industry that's already unionized. You can just join, be like, I'm a proletarian, I'm joining the IWW, and then like just go from there. As far as like resources, I'm not sure what exactly you're looking for, but I would talk to other people engaged in that now. Oh, so somebody put tempworkerjustice.org. Yeah, I haven't seen this, but thank you for digging up that link. Canada treats international students and workers horribly. There's a lot of racism toward Indians here too. Classic case of replacing class struggle with racial struggle. So people need to like understand the concept of scabbing, which like where companies bring in workers to break a union, to break a strike, and there's lots of different, that has a lot of different faces and forms. How do you combat scabbing? That's a kind of a larger thing. I would encourage people to, there's a lot of books written about labor history, industrial relations, and history of radical labor struggle. Read up. I mean, there's really a lot you can learn from the history of different struggles and campaigns. It's a hard thing to just give a blanket overview of, but there's a lot of campaigns that have struggled against scabbing, and which can take even the form of like union scabbing. This was a thing with the AFL back in the day, like a long time ago. They would scab against other unions. Like one union would go on strike and the company would hire AFL workers to fucking break the strike. Talk about not having solidarity. Just more toward how the Dems and Republicans are aligned. In my area, the Dems regularly refuse to run in local elections and endorse the, quote, less bad Republican. I live in one of the most Republican-leaning districts in the country. So much for the Democrats being anti-fascist, huh? Well, not just that, but how about how many Democrats, top Democrats, say, we need a strong Republican Party. And this is what I was telling somebody recently in the comments, where they're like, no. We need to, here's Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff. We need a strong Republican Party. You can find Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, other people saying this. So they're like, no, we need to get the Republicans out of the way first. And then here's Harris herself saying that if elected, she will put a Republican, and I had this on the community post, she will appoint a Republican to her cabinet if elected. Supporting Democrats means supporting Republicans. Why? Because the Democrats support the Republican Party. They will support Republicans any day before they will support a Green. They will align against the left every fucking time. So this whole, we need to get rid of the Republicans first, then we take on the Democrats. No, you won't, because the Democrats are going to keep the Republicans in the game. Why? They're both funded by the same people. Like, stop being fooled. You know, it's like a sock puppet show where it's the same person. They got one on their left hand, one on their right hand. It's the same fucking person, like, running the puppets. Stop being fooled. It's like you're 2 years old. Wake up. Like, it's so fucking frustrating. You know? And again, it's like, this is a communist channel. We talk about Marxism, Leninism. We've even, you know, at this point gone beyond the sort of trad ML thing of, like, you know, China's based whatever. Yeah, we've gotten into the anti-revisionist stuff. We've gotten into, like, what were the factors of the USSR restoring capitalism from within, and was that going on actually for decades prior to Gorbachev even? And, you know, why is that? Because class struggle intensifies under socialism, and, you know, when the party's the only vehicle, revisionists are just going to, you know, be in the party and trying to establish a petty bourgeois line if you don't have really, really vigilant Marxist-Leninist leadership, just constantly combating that, etc. So we're going on into that. Meanwhile, you've got people like who still can't see that the Democrats and Republicans work for the same people. It's hard. You know, it's hard. But that's why we have to, yes, we do our advanced studies. You also have to stay grounded in, like, where are most people at, because we have to influence them and have the discussions that are on their mind and move them along, you know, working with what we have. We have to move them along to the next step and the next and the next and the next. And sometimes you get somebody who makes, like, a bit of a quantum leap. A lot of times it is like step by step by step. That's not to excuse it, and it's not to say that, oh, we have all the time in the world. No, I mean, we need to make the most out of the people who are ready to do the most now, and so on. But it does mean there's no time for foot dragging and etc. But these kinds of delusions people have about that the Republicans and Democrats, like, are separate somehow. They're absolutely not. They're funded by the same basic, like, the same industries and everything else. The same class funds them, and they cooperate in maintaining and expanding American imperialism on behalf of a larger world imperialist system. Also, I mean, the U.S.'s military goes into every country that does anything vaguely democratic and puts it down militarily and contributes to right-wing coups around the world. And that's the Democrats too, baby. Open your eyes. That's the Democrats too. You know, it's sad. People think that they can weigh in on this stuff when they're still confused by, like, wait, but there's two puppets. You're saying that the same guy controls them? How is that possible? Because he got two hands. You know. I don't know. This is a point where I just want to start shaking them. But it's like, really, what the fuck is so confusing about this? I don't get this. I've never gotten it, and I don't really understand the struggle that people have with this. I just honestly don't. But, yeah. Where were we? So anyway, also, did you see what Colin Allred, the guy running against Ted Cruz, put out about how he's tough on the border and also is transphobic? Yeah, it's the same thing Harris is doing. They don't care about the left. The left only exists for them to blame after the fact. They don't want your vote. They don't care. They're not trying to earn your vote. They're just marketing themselves to Republicans. They're still using the Chuck Schumer, you know, for every Rust Belt person we lose, we pick up 2 or 3 in the city. That's the world they're living in. These people are totally insulated from reality. They don't care. They work for their corporate overlords, and they're very rich, and that is their world, and they don't socialize or really have any meaningful, open-ended conversations with people outside that bubble. They just don't. And that's the world that they live in. Those are the people they serve. That's what's important. That's what matters to them. That's their mission. Those are their values. Just realize this. They don't care about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They never have, and they never will. It's not a thing that's going to happen. So yeah, it's just I don't know what else it takes. And then for the people still trying to like work within the Democrats, pull them left. How did that work with Joe Biden? It didn't work at all. No. They shredded Bernie Sanders, so there's we're going to run a leftist within the party. AOC now just goes along with most of whatever the party wants. She was pushing Joe Biden even after the fucking New York Times had moved on from Joe Biden and whatever else. So, you don't work from within. You get shredded like Bernie Sanders, or you become a complete sellout like AOC. That's what happens when you work within the Democrats. But the amount of shaming that they do of people who announce on social media that they are, going green, which is the obvious, like, readily accessible, on the ballot in all 50 states, although there's a couple of states where the Dems kicked them off because they believe in democracy so much. And there's a write-in campaign instead. But they're on the ballot in enough states to win the election as far as they can't win. Yeah, they can win if people voted for them. It's not like a structural thing that they can't win because they're not on enough ballots to get the electoral votes. They absolutely are. It's just a question of whether people will vote for them or not. But the thing that they really care about is not getting your vote. It's preventing a left movement. It's preventing change. It's preventing any serious organized resistance from ever developing. No matter how embryonic you think that sort of a Green Party left is, and I agree it's not very well defined. It's not really the basis of a vanguard party. This is like a preliminary step in building a U.S. left on a mass basis. No matter what you think about that, they are bringing out the heavy artillery against even that getting formed. And that is really what... meanwhile, they themselves will not move left in any way, shape, or form. That's what it's about. It's about preventing change. So, yeah. What texts would you recommend as an introduction for economics? Start with Marx. Marx actually critiques a lot of earlier, like, political economy and economics. I mean, if you want to, go... Start with Marx, read back over some of the things he references if you want to expand out. Or you can just pick up any random microeconomics, macroeconomics text, but it's garbage. You should read Marx first. Then if you want to read some of that stuff, go back. But, yeah. Democratic Party slogan, enter here all ye progressive movements who wish to die. I mean, it's what has happened time and again. It reminds me, the Texas situation reminds me of in upstate New York, all the ads about how they're better than each other on border control and funding cops. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're interested in. Those are the class interests they represent. Hence, that's what they talk about in their political messages. So yeah, Bernie threw a Strokes concert turned it into a Ted Nugent concert. There you go. I'm not sure everyone knows who Ted Nugent is, but yeah, cat scratch fever, baby. No, he's like a right-wing rock and roller dude. I love to oppress the foreigners. Vote for me. And also the other guy loves China. Tiresome. Absolutely. Also, hats off today. Our normal mods don't seem to be with us. Thanks to Atlas Purged for lending a hand. And if you feel like you've been wrongly banned, send me a private message. We'll work it out. Our mods are just trying to keep things good. And yeah, so we appreciate it. Just like everything else we're talking about, it's a volunteer effort. So yeah. Oh yeah, well, there's also the other issue. Look how Kamala became the nominee. Absolutely. Kamala zeroed delegates Harris. When she was actually running in the primary in 2020, she got no delegates and dropped out. They made her vice president anyway, and then they didn't have a primary, and now she's the presidential candidate. Hooray. See how much the Democratic Party loves democracy? Bernie sounds like Mr. Dink from Doug. I always hated Doug. Something about the aesthetic of that show. I never even watched it enough to know who Mr. Dink is. Anyway, I do from time to time hum the theme song from Doug, but that's all. And it's not a welcome presence in my mind, but I do from time to time get the Doug theme stuck in my head. A little bit of things to know about me. Why do you think more people aren't organizing? Fear and despair. I think it's hopelessness. Fear, despair, hopelessness. They already feel defeated and they don't want to stick their necks out and get hurt anymore. I think people are very alienated, very hurt, and they've developed a lot of learned helplessness, hopelessness, despair, and fear. As far as the people who see what's going on and still aren't standing up. And then a lot of the people who have the wrong idea and more like petty bourgeois politics and social imperialism, they unfortunately are involved. And they're out there with the Democratic Party. But I think there are a lot of people who aren't getting involved. There's also a problem. Sometimes people do get involved. They have bad experiences. And that's another thing that has to be addressed. Again, I think if we took some of these organizations out of the fringes more, then they're less like cults. I know a comrade who related being in a very small organization, and turned out there was like sexual abuse happening. I mean, we saw like Caleb Muppet, there was all the sexual abuse stuff going on there, and the spanking and whatever. People laughed at the spanking, but it's like, yeah, that's sexual exploitation, not good. And that's part of the problem with, it's not that the group, the party, the organization necessarily, I mean, in the case of Caleb Muppet it did, but that they stood for bad things. Some of these things are good, but when it's real small and you get a lot of angry people who are angry at the system together, and maybe they have, psychological trauma, there's a lot of headbutting that goes on. There's a lot of non-constructive dynamics that can actually add to the harm that people are experiencing. So sometimes people have been involved and they've had bad experiences. I had to withdraw for a while because of bad experiences that I had in an organization that was smaller and had a lot of these problems of like, you get one wrecker in and there's 10 other people and they do a lot of damage. That was a while ago. I think that people are learning these lessons, but so there is a variety of things going on. But again, it's like, this is where a lot of these things would be fixed. You get millions of people involved. Okay, it's less of a tiny cult where a few wreckers can do so much harm. So anyway, as the commenter said, I think it's a lot of downwardly mobile white middle class people right now. Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of kind of fascist anger out of that group if they haven't done more study and don't have more social and class consciousness. So yeah, and I think that in the end, the U.S. is probably going to go through a lot of really violent change. I mean, the people who have power are willing to use violence to hang on to it, and while they're committing massive harm. And in order to stand up against that, it's going to take a lot on the part of people who are going to stick it out for that fight. So, I mean, it's going to be an ugly process. A lot of people, like I was just saying, are going to be casualties of that experience. I have been a casualty of it to an extent, but you just find new ways of getting involved again and learn from the mistakes and do better, because it's not going away. The struggle is not going away. And again, it's going to come around for you eventually in some way, whether the climate crisis, that's going to affect us all, whether it's a military conflict, particularly if you're like outside the U.S., it's the struggle is coming for us all. It's going to affect us all in some way. I mean, like COVID, there's an airborne virus. So, I mean, that killed a lot of people and disabled tens of millions more in this country alone. And it's still, the last few weeks, 1,000 people a week dying from COVID. When it's, quote, over. And you got 1,000 people a week dying and many more becoming disabled from it and brain damaged and upping their chances of a heart attack and everything else. That's just the ones that are getting directly killed by it. So it's like, it's coming for you somehow. We have to do this. We have to. Is Project 2025 similar to PNAC? I mean, it's just there's all these right wing schemes to, uh, just increase the amount of fascisation, improve on the fascist dictatorship, build a more complete fascist order. And yeah, I mean, it's like Project 2025. It's just upping the stakes yet again. So it's similar in that it's a quantum leap forward, just like the Project for the New American Century had the Rebuilding America's Defenses document and other documents that they had as like white papers of like how to radically transform in a reactionary way the current system. How do they make it much more right wing quickly? And yeah, it's very similar. And people are like, oh, Project 2025 is worse. Yeah, you know why it's worse? Because it's happening later and they build on what they've already done. It's just amazing to me. Again, I don't really get the struggle sometimes. Like, please think before speaking. Sometimes it's like, oh, but it's worse than that. Yeah, because they just keep building on it. Like, it's always going to be worse. It's always going to be worse. They're not going to just be like, well, we can like relax now. No, they can't relax. Capitalism is going to go into more and more crisis the more time goes on. And I think that this is like a fundamental problem, especially after reading Fascism and Social Revolution, which is currently the pinned audiobook for returning subscribers. It's still the State and Revolution for people who haven't subscribed yet. But I think everybody should read Fascism and Social Revolution by Dutt, 1935. Really, that discussion of capitalism in decay due to a delayed proletarian revolution still characterizes the imperialist era today, which we're still in. People often will say things like, oh, wow, this Lenin audiobook is amazing. Lenin was a time traveler. No, he wasn't. We're just still in the same historical moment. It's still the same basic conditions. It's still imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, advanced monopoly capitalism, what the Lawberts call crony capitalism or whatever. It's advanced monopoly capitalism. This is just the logic of capitalism, how it works out. You can't really turn back the wheel of history on that. It's reactionary to try. You can break up the trusts. It's just going to go back the way it was, and it's futile. The only thing you can really do is go forward into socialism, and proletarian revolution is how you get to socialism. There is no other way. There's no parliamentary road. The parliamentary struggle can be useful to disrupt bourgeois politics, to call attention to the struggle and things like that. It itself is not a road to socialism, as has been shown many, many times by now. So anyway, but this basic thing of advanced capitalism in decay due to delayed proletarian revolution, I think what happened is, in large part, the proletariat of Europe, and I single out Europe here because, and by which I mean Western Europe primarily, the most advanced capitalist powers of the early 20th century. I single out Europe over the U.S. because the U.S. is a special case. Being settler colonial, they had a lot more room to expand. They had a lot more ways to vent social unrest by giving away land. They had to, they had to conquer the continent, and they got people to be complicit in that and to conquer it for them, as they did genocide against the people who were already living on this continent. And so there was more of a safety valve in the U.S. In Europe, there wasn't that, although people did also move to the U.S. from Europe. So there was like a bit of a safety valve. But as far as like the actual countries themselves, I think that the proletariat of those countries, and I mean, they had other colonies and stuff as well. But as far as those countries in particular, I think that the working class movements of Europe looked at what Russia did in World War I and with the ensuing civil revolutionary war to establish the USSR. And I think that they collectively decided, we're not going to do that. We're going to just tough it out. We're just going to let capitalism run its course and cross our fingers and hope for the best, because what it takes to do a revolution looks massively, massively painful and difficult. And we're just going to, let capitalism run and hope for the best. And how did that work out? That's where we are today. That's what I say to myself. It's just business as usual. There's been a plan under different names since the 80s. Democrats love the Republican Party, the hand that washes the other, and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, they have to keep adapting social policy to meet the needs of capitalism. And so as capitalism goes into a profitability crisis, they have to do neoliberalism starting in the 70s, late 70s. There was a massive economic crisis in the 70s, like mid-70s. And by the end of the 70s, they were like, we really need to crack down and pull back the social safety net and shore up profits. And so Reagan was like the messianic, morning in America harbinger of neoliberalism in that way. It started before him, but it was really like the Reagan plan that was presented as a new vision for the country to, crack down on all the social programs and everything else. And why? Because the corporations were experiencing profitability issues, and that has continued to this day. And, of course, after the former USSR went back on the market, they got some relief in the 90s again because they got assets for cheap that they were able to pull into the capitalist system. Hey, more profits. But then they go back into crisis. There's the dot-com crisis in the 2000, 2001. There's the global financial crisis of 2008. There was a more minor crisis in the mid-2010s. There was another one heading at the end of 2019, and then the pandemic kind of obscured that. And now we're gearing up for another one. But, yeah, they re-engineer social policy to meet the needs of capitalism. You get rid of capitalism, you can have different social policy, but not really until that. I mean, you can struggle for concessions and you can struggle for changes, but it's going to be coming out of the capitalists' pocket. They're the people who own that stuff legally under this system, and they control most of the government, and they're gonna do that. System works for them to protect their private property interests. So you can't just hang out in capitalism indefinitely. Any gains you win are going to be fleeting and temporary, and must be used only as propaganda. I mean, they will also, they will create better conditions in the short term, but you're not going to hang on to them very long. They need to mainly be put out there as propaganda, as like, hey, we won this by working together, but in order to hang on to it, we need to end capitalism, and we need to, in order to get any more than this, we need to end capitalism, because with these people still in the way, they're going to block anything more than this, and we need to keep going on. So, what are you talking about? George W. Bush is a pleasant grandpa who paints and jokes around with the Obamas. I mean, it's truly like everyone forgot what those years are like. I never see people, hardly ever. It's like 1 in 1,000 do I see anybody referencing any of the dirt from the W. Cheney years. And it was massive. Every day was like a fresh nightmare. And yet it's like, poof, none of that ever happened. And that everything that they made real then is like normal now. And there was no effort to really roll that back or anything else. Crazy. To be honest, a lot of Democrats genuinely are brainwashed. They really think that those war criminals are heroes. It's sad. Bush and Cheney were like a more effective version of Trump. That said, I mean, any time that there's a fascist initiative in any country, some part of the bourgeoisie resists it. They're like, look, we need to save capitalism, but I don't know about this. Isn't this like a step too far? Isn't there some other way that we can do it? But then other factions of the capitalist class are like, no, we need to just do the fascism thing. Oh my God, people need to cut the shit with Project 2025. The, quote, Democrats could have saved Roe v. Wade, but instead Roe became another carrot for the Democrats to hang over the heads of the general public. They don't care about the people. Yeah. W told us God told him to invade Iraq. Doesn't get much worse than that. Yet, why isn't he supporting Harris? Honestly, they don't care about you, and they're very open about it, and people need to really listen to that. Project 2025 doesn't even require a Republican. Even if it did, there will be Project 2029, etc. No, you don't get it. We just need a strong and pure and just Republican Party. Yeah. This whole we can have a better Republican Party. No, there shouldn't be a Republican Party at all. That should not exist. This whole threat to democracy thing, if you still believe that, and you think the Democrats are in favor of democracy in any way, You're lost. You're lost. I want you to, first of all, admit that to yourself. You're lost. You're believing things that are not true. It's same with the liberal and conservative flip-flop here in Canada my whole life. How do you not wake up from that as a thinking adult? Well, there you go. The Jim Crow requires both wings to fly. Back on the thing about that guy's wife, it's because she thinks somehow the Democrats stand to protect against those things, but they don't. Yeah, I guess why does she think that? To answer your question, she says I'm voting to protect my rights as a woman and calls me privileged. Look back over about the last 40 years. Where are we now? How did we get here? That to me is like how I arrived at the conclusion that we're in danger. We need to do something radically different. This thing of like, oh, we just need to, like, I do see a lot of that thinking on social media of like, oh, I need to cling to this one thing that the Democrats said that they're going to protect. They actually won't. But they said that they're going to protect it. They've never protected it really before, or if they do some twisted, totally watered down, unrecognizable version of it. And then they just, blame it on the Republicans or the left or whatever. And so then they wind up in the same exact position of like, hanging on by their fingernails every single time. Don't you want like out of that? And what if, hear me out, what if we built a movement that was strong enough to stand on its own, where you're not overly concerned about who the capitalists put in power, because no matter who they put in power, we can effectively resist and continue on a building on a campaign to defeat them utterly. But see, a lot of these people really don't think that that's possible or even desirable. Like we were saying before, you need class consciousness plus organization plus a societal crisis to have a revolution. But if you don't have the class consciousness, you don't even think capitalism's a problem. You don't understand that it is in fact the root of these problems. And so you're not going to struggle against it. And then if you don't have the organization, even if you do have the class consciousness, you can't act on it. And then if you don't have the society-wide crisis, which they occur periodically anyway, so it's just a matter of kind of, waiting around for one to happen. They do happen. It doesn't take that long for one to emerge. Although, sort of just the right moment to capitalize on, it's like a pick your battles kind of thing. But yeah, it's like if you think that just hanging on by your fingernails for decade after decade is appropriate and a good long-term strategy, yeah, then get behind the Democrats. If you actually believe in building a movement that could create a radically different order, which is a possible and desirable thing, then do that. And then, for however long the bourgeoisie stay as the ruling class, we will fight them and we will win and we will resist what they throw at us. But if you keep getting behind the Democrats, that's not effective resistance. They think they should have a strong Republican Party, and they're not resisting really. So it's a lifetime of brainwashing and selective education too. People just do not realize there are more than two options. Yeah, but I'm talking like specifically, about the people who do realize that in this case, and then are still refusing to try to stand on their own. I mean, in a lot of ways, it mirrors the dynamics of like abusive families. So, if you're at all familiar with those kinds of things, you get people who keep protecting the abuse. I think a lot of it is the same, but like on a macro level, it's just something in human psychology, I think, that gets brought out, and then these people know how to play on it, I think for some people it's just not real. When talking about voting for Genocide Harris, it's Genocide Joe and Holocaust Harris. Because, well, I'm not going to put the graphic on the screen right now, but yeah, there was recently an attack in Gaza where Israel burned a lot of people in a hospital alive, and there was footage of like people burning to death still moving with IVs hooked up to them. So yeah, Genocide Joe, Holocaust Harris. Anyway, it's not close enough to home for them to care. Yeah, again, climate change, COVID, it hasn't hit us militarily at this point because the U.S. is the global hegemon with respect to that. But, I mean, it's going to hit you somehow. And again, how many people lost their houses in 2008, et cetera? That was a big enough thing, 2008, all anybody had talked about since 2001 was terrorism. But then in 2008, 7 years later, the GFC, the global financial crisis, happened, and then people finally stopped talking about terrorism. Finally, something came along, real world, because terrorism was a totally invented threat in the first place. You had like more chance of getting struck by lightning than you did getting hurt in a terrorist attack in the U.S. Something real came along that was big enough to disrupt that entire war on terror thing, and then people started talking about the economy and, hey, I'm losing my house and all this other stuff, and that's when things can shift in things like that, or it hits close to home. And I think after you get 2 or 3 of those in somebody's lifetime, that's more of an opportunity to get them questioning. And unfortunately, denial really seems to work for a lot of people, or they think that it does. And, these psychological defenses people have against, I got to do this really hard thing, and I got to risk my reputation and my safety and my financial security and everything else, to the extent that, people in this country, maybe a third of people in this country have any financial security at all. 2/3 really just live paycheck to paycheck. But whatever it is that you think you have at stake, that you have to lose, whether it's like your family or whatever it is, there are people who feel like they don't have anything to lose, or that what we have to gain is worth risking it. Other people are like, no, I'm just going to cling to this, and I don't want to risk it, and we'll just wait it out. But, sometimes you think that, but then you lose it anyway, despite not taking the risk, because it just, came home to roost for you personally in a way you didn't expect, or you were just hoping. And sometimes it gets through people's psychological walls, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it takes multiple times, and sometimes even after multiple times, it still doesn't hit home for people. But, other people are just like, it's more obvious to some than others, and some people are emotionally more willing to accept it, but yeah. I point out that Roe v. Wade was undone under Biden. Even Bernie advocated for not kicking pro-birth candidates out of the party. Yeah, you can't change a party like that. You can't change them. You cannot reform the Democrats. But yet it hasn't really changed her thinking. People only really start changing when they internalize it and they're like, yeah, that makes sense, and I should actually change my thinking. It's frustrating. Bush and Cheney were way more Christofascist. Yeah, go watch a movie called Jesus Camp. I think it's from 2006. Nice little snapshot of that time. I love the special features on that, too. You can find them on YouTube. It's like extra interviews with the people. Absolutely, yeah, they harnessed that evangelical thing dead on. It was disturbing. Jill Stein stepped up her platform immensely since last time and is crushing the PR game. Well, she's saying that she will end aid to Israel, at least until they stop doing the Holocaust in Gaza. Israel is committing a Holocaust right now. And the Jill Stein of the Greens has said, we will end U.S. aid to Israel. Because like I was saying, when I write Zionists now on social media, I put a U.S. flag icon and an Israeli flag icon next to it, because Israel would not be able to do anything it's doing without the U.S. So yeah, look, you want to end the genocide? There's a candidate on the ballot in almost every state, and there's write-ins on the states that the Democrats kicked them off the ballot, who is telling you now they will end U.S. aid to Israel. If you want that, vote Green, because they're right there. And if you won't do it, you make some excuse for why not. I'm sorry, but, what is with the foot dragging at this point? Get involved. And again, that's like the bare minimum. The voting is that's not even scratching the surface. It's get involved in the organizing. I was just talking to my sister about how social issues like age gap couples were viewed 10 or 20 years ago. The 90s, early 2000s was insane. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The Monica Lewinsky shit happened right before the .com crash that cost me my childhood home. We could no longer afford to live in my town, and I had to leave all my friends. The media can fuck off. By the way, the .com crash of 99 to 2000 was a loss of 60,000 jobs. A big deal at the time, but now we're at 300,000 a quarter. But hey, Joe Biden added the most jobs of any Democrat, or of any president ever. Yeah, you maybe want to mention that there was a pandemic, though. The economy was shut down by mandate. And again, not complaining about that, but it's a bit dishonest not to mention that in your statistics. The Democrat strategy is to be non-Trump Republicans. Yeah. Who might actually win? I don't know. It's a toss-up. Okay, so I'm back from just a momentary break here, and I think that what we're going to do today, I've been really enjoying this conversation because I've had a lot to get off my chest the last few weeks. We haven't even started the articles yet, so I think that we're going to have to continue this in a part 2. I'm not sure if tomorrow, I'm not really sure when. We're going to have to continue this soon, though, because there's no way I think I can get to the articles today. Unless the chat is shorter than I'm thinking that it is, but I'd like to catch up with the chat and then probably wrap it up. But anyway, where are we? Yeah, so somebody said just keep in mind the IWW is anarcho-syndicalist dominated. We've mentioned that on the channel in the past. The IWW had a number of splits, and that was one of them, was between more of like communist and anarchist people. So yeah, the IWW today is very anarchist dominated, unfortunately. I mean, like a lot of the US left has that anarchist petty bourgeois mindset, very individualist. And I do see potential for overcoming that. But yeah, just something to be aware of is learn tactics from the IWW, but as far as their political ideology, you can tell them where to stick it, but yeah, there are a lot of anarchists in there. Traveling nurses are used as scabs by their employers, often unknowingly, since they usually work alone and don't have the same kind of work relationships. Union scabbers seems like a contradiction. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't happen if the other union had any solidarity, but that's why they used to call the AFL the AF of Hell, because it was the most reactionary labor union by far. It was like pro-capitalist. That's why their slogan was a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. And the IWW slogan, which was written to counter that, was abolition of the wage system. I mean, I believe Marx had something to say about that as a slogan, but that was the idea, was we can do more than a fair day's wage for a system that shouldn't exist. We have to remember none of us jumped from, quote, normal politics to this. If we grew up in a, quote, typical North American family and educational system, it took me 20 years of adulthood to become a Marxist. You can't pull people into it in a week. Yeah, they literally chained Jill Stein to a chair in a basement for showing up to a debate. So yeah, that's like a time-honored tradition where the Greens and the Libertarians, which are, the largest of the non-Democrat, non-Republican parties, they try to attend the official presidential debates and they always get arrested. So yeah, that's been happening for years. AOC was still pushing Biden even after the rest of the party was like, we need to move on from Biden, because she has his personal cell phone number and not Kamala's. AOC doing her utmost to remain irrelevant. Yeah, I barely ever see her in the news anymore. They just trot her out every once in a while. Well, they had her go against Jill Stein, actually. That was just recently, where it was called it the Green campaign gross or something. It called it some bizarre insult, and it's your party is doing a genocide. Maybe focus on that. When you say read Marx first, do you mean capital? No. So we have the basic Marxism-Leninism study guide playlist. Go to the home tab on the YouTube. Scroll down. You'll see recommended reading lists, and there's a number of playlists. Do those. No, don't start with capital. It's a bit dry. Probably go over your head. There are shorter pieces by Marx, like, if you want to start now, wage, labor, and capital, and value, price, and profit are some introductions. So, and then there's other things in those playlists that, by the time you've heard all those, then you should be able to do capital. Anytime I see a video online of workers trying to form a union, all the comments are so out of touch, and they show not even a shred of class consciousness. Yeah, some of those are going to be trolls, for sure. But, I mean, yes. So, before I was doing communist stuff, I was doing a lot of union stuff. I know the kind of comments you're talking about. Actually, you want to see the best, go on Facebook and look at stories about union organizing. Oh, boy. The COVID thing really was the biggest failure of the Biden administration until 500,000 Palestinians were bombed under their watch in USAID. Yeah. Also, the housing crisis. I mean, the housing crisis is something people still aren't really talking about that much. They will be, though, when it crashes. And Florida may be one of the tipping points because of the 2 hurricanes and stuff. Florida was already experiencing the beginnings of a housing crash prior to those hurricanes. There's going to be a lot of Airbnb people declaring bankruptcy after those. Biden failed on COVID, women's reproductive freedoms, failed the record amount of unhoused, failed Gaza. Yeah, why should I vote for another 4 years of this? Because Trump, duh. Going to brunch now. Orange man bad. I mean, Orange man is bad. I fucking hate Trump, but like, you know, let's be real here. The Democrats are bringing absolutely nothing to the table. There you go. The United States of Amnesia regarding the George W. Bush, Dick Cheney era. There you go. Hey, John. Aren't most fascists outside of the bourgeoisie? Well, fascism tries to build a social movement, which necessarily isn't going to be bourgeois, because bourgeoisie is a very small class. But, I mean, it fundamentally represents bourgeois interests. I used to put Bush lies, who dies stickers all around my college campus back in the day. Salute. Off topic, sorta, but does anyone remember what state the CIA trained Al-Qaida in? I mean, that goes back to when they were funding the Mujahideen back in like the late 70s, around 1980, when the USSR was active in Afghanistan, and China helped with that, by the way, funding and arming. And then so the Al-Qaida has its roots in that, Al-CIAda, and then they, became like a CIA asset. I mean, there's more specific things, like on 9/11, some of the alleged hijackers were training U.S. military bases, but that's a whole other story. The threat of a totalitarian police state under Project 2025 that the Democrats are trying to scare people with wouldn't even be possible without decades of bipartisan support for increasing police and military resources. Yeah, so like let's go back to 2020, the summer before the last presidential election, the BLM protests, and like defund the police, hashtag abolish the police, hashtag defund the police. What did Biden do? Just shoot him in the leg. Everything's fine. Give more money to cops. The reason that the police are bad is because they don't have enough money. Give them more money. Be nice if they applied that logic to the education system, but they will apply it to police. And yeah, just shoot him in the leg. That's fine. That was Joe Biden. So literally you had people out in the streets in droves, in record numbers. And what did the Democratic Party do? They put up Joe Biden, who gave more money, not less, to police. And some of the COVID money got reallocated. If places didn't use the COVID money, it sounds like I'm making it up, but you can look this up. COVID money went to police funding in various states and localities. If it didn't get used up by whatever meager public health services were there, they used the excess money and put it into the police. That's what actually happened. So yeah, tell me again how, all the things the scary Republicans are going to do, and they will, aren't being done by the Democrats. They are. My buddies and I used to egg the Republican headquarters every night. They were conveniently located right outside my college apartment. There you go. I just want to watch the Green Party's numbers go up, maybe organize it for them next year. Organize for them this year. Don't wait. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I mean, that's good though, but don't wait. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris could have codified Roe v. Wade, but they allowed for the rolling back of reproductive rights under their watch. Kamala doesn't care about women's rights at all. I'm not convinced she cares about anything. Yeah, no, that's not a wedge issue, you fucking dumbass. Reproductive rights are working class rights. Period. Reproductive rights are workers' rights. As Marxists, we know criticism and self-criticism is the way to build movements. The unwillingness and demonization of those willing to criticize Democrats lets you know there is no movement there. There you go. DemExit. Absolutely. My family was among those people who lost their house. Then the Obama PSYOP happened, and it held us back. Yeah, they had a lot of people fooled with Obama. All right, I'm still trying to catch up with the chat here just so we can even end this part of the stream. We've been rolling for 3 hours already. I'm trying to keep these to an editable amount. Sorry we haven't gotten to articles. I didn't realize people wanted to talk so much, but apparently people were feeling chatty today. Sometimes, we do the chat and there's 10 minutes of chat, Today there's 3 hours of chat. So, you know, plans work out about 50% of the time here. Full of surprises. Oh, you mean on Palestine, the censorship of community college? Man, I'm like 20 minutes behind this chat here. I want to end this sometime today. I wish I could share the specifics. Trust me, community college professors are being persecuted for being, quote, too woke. Right now, I am rebuilding an entire class because of one reading by Howard Zinn. Wow. I have definitely read Howard Zinn in community college history classes before. Not a problem. That may be like a very recent thing, but okay, I hear you. The war on education is very real. I remember there was some stuff in Florida in particular that we covered on that recently. I know a few good Maoists in the IWW. The IWW held a huge base of what became the communist parties, which united into CPUSA in like the early 20s. Yeah, Comintern time. I'm not from the U.S. Isn't there something about increased funding capabilities when reaching 5% of the vote? Would that be an achievable goal for the Greens this election? I mean, that's been discussed since forever. I contend it's really not a funding issue. It's an involvement and volunteering issue. That's what I would have to say. It's people aren't. You know what? I'll refrain from diagnosing the problem right now. But I think it's less of a funding problem and more of a overcoming the vitriol that comes out of the Democrats. I mean, you stick your neck out even for the Greens in this country, and it's like you will have the entirety of the Democratic Party coming down on you. I don't think J.D. Vance is really going to win that many people over. That's me personally. I think he's actually dragging down the Trump ticket, if anything. My personal impression. It is definitely growing. I'm 19, and as soon as I heard of Marx, a few of my friends and I turned red. Of course, we were more primed for it than most and are still learning, but more and more people, at least within my scope, have begun to become disillusioned with capitalism. Love from West Virginia. Well, welcome. I'm glad to hear that. We're trying to make it as easy as possible and interesting as possible for people to do that. So good. Glad you're here. And support to you and your friends. Florida needs 1,000 new residents a day to survive. It's done. Yeah, the housing prices are crashing there. Between the insurance costs and everything, it's done, yeah. Joe Biden said if Iran hurts Trump, he's going to do something bad back to them. Okay. So the U.S. just sent an air defense system and 100 troops, I think, to operate it to Israel specifically to defend against Iran. So, again, it's all one seamless continuity. Joe Biden is like, stop Cop City. Best I can do is spread Cop City. Yep. I don't trust anyone above the law when it comes to sexual misconduct. Look how men that aren't above the law treat women, children, and others in that regard. Yeah. I know you're joking when you say you just want Trump to win, admit it. It still just makes me furious. I don't know how... let me put it this way. I look forward to the day when that is only a joke, like no one falls for that, no one believes it. We all look back and laugh that ever worked. But yeah, so many people unironically like, I think Green voters really just want Trump to win. They just can't admit it. Is your imagination really so limited that you really, really think no one could possibly want what the Greens are offering? You really are just happy, content with your lot, and like it's really just, oh, I like Trump, I'm just in denial of it. I mean, Joe Sims wrote that. Joe Sims, co-chair of the CPUSA, wrote that. His one of his relatives would be like, you like Bush, you just won't admit it. And then he was like unironically turning around and like saying that at the end of the thing in the hashtag vote against fascism. If you're in CPUSA and Joe Sims stays the co-chair, what do you have to say for yourself? Like, what do you, the party's a joke anyway. I've left CPUSA alone for a while, but like, honestly. Yeah, David Duke, who is a complete political non-entity these days, said in one of his, podcasts that nobody listens to, that he would support Jill Stein because she would end aid to Israel. But for anyone, you have to be very naive. First of all, I think David Duke matters in any way, shape, or form. Also, to think that the Greens would accept an endorsement like that and be like, oh, yay, well, we got to work with whoever. No. The Green Party wants nothing to do with that, and people on the left oppose Zionism because it is colonialism and it's genocidal. People on the right are just racist. So, like, there's a difference. And yeah, they can't decide whether they hate brown people more or Jewish people more. And so, yeah, that's where David Duke weighed in. But the difference is the Greens reject endorsements like that. When people like Dick Cheney, war criminals like Dick Cheney, say that they're endorsing the Democrats are like, ha, we got the Dick Cheney endorsement. How about W? So you see the difference there? You know, the Green Party doesn't go for that kind of fucking idiotic trolling. But the Democrats do embrace war criminal endorsements. So there's the difference. Hey, we finally caught up with the chat. So I am actually going to have to leave it here. We're going to have to do a part 2 because I actually had a bunch of good articles pulled. But I guess it had been a while and we hit on a topic everybody likes talking about. So everybody was talking about it. But yeah, we're going to leave it here. Let me thank the patrons before we head out for the day and just remind folks that there's the patrons on the screen. If you'd like to kick in, patreon.com/socialismforall and buymeacoffee.com/socialismforall are 2 places you can do that. Every donation is encouraging. They're also materially helpful and allow me to spend more time on this channel, whether it's streaming, whether it's recording, editing, promoting a video, doing research for playlists, tracking down readings, doing readings to figure out whether they deserve to be done on the channel, and then thinking about how they fit into a playlist or a topic or a theme. That's what you're funding when you fund this channel. We're non-commercial and viewer supported, so we don't do ads or sponsorships. We rely on you. The only reason this channel gets any funding is because you out in the audience decided that we should have some money, and we greatly appreciate it because it has allowed me to keep building this channel into a thing that lots of people are listening to, and we are helping to make it easier for people to study communism and to ground whatever left activism they're doing now in a larger struggle for, you know, as part of the international communist movement and the larger struggle against capitalism and for socialism that is global. So, you know, the U.S. has been really outside the loop on that. We've been talking all stream about the Democrats and all the kind of fucked up things that, you know, people in the U.S. think is the left. We're trying to bring in more of like, no, it's time for U.S. Americans to get caught up with the history of the international communist movement and to talk more about radical labor movement and all the things that are going to make the U.S. left more internationalist, less social chauvinist, etc. So we will keep doing that, and we will continue with the articles that I pulled in a stream really soon. I'm going to have to look at my schedule and figure out when I can do that, but I do want to do it soon. So I don't know if that's going to be this weekend or what, but probably that stream. I think we got a lot of the chat out of our system, so we'll probably jump right into the articles and then catch up with that. So thanks again for listening, and we will see y'all in the next video.